recording. Okay. Good morning, all. Welcome to another edition of Jews in the News. And I, um, somebody else is coming in. Uh, I wanted to talk today about something that was in the news, it's already a month ago, about rabbis or a particular rabbi who was publicly supporting and encouraging others to support a particular political candidate. We're going to watch her video that was on a like a Zoom call for Jews for the Democratic Party. You'll see. It's like a 3-minute video. And but first, I wanted to share my screen and just share with you from the Internal Revenue Service on their website what it means to be a 501c3 organization, which we are, Sharei Tefillah is, and I would imagine all synagogues and churches are, and what are restrictions related to that. So let me share my screen for that. Okay, so this I just cut and pasted because it's just easier to do it that way. So on their website, they say, under the Internal Revenue Code, all 501c3 organizations are absolutely prohibited from directly or indirectly participating in or intervening in any political campaign on behalf of or in opposition to any candidate for elective public office. So I think that's pretty clear. An organization, like we can't have a sign, and in fact, there was one a month ago on our property. We can't have a sign or on our property that is in favor of a political candidate. Somehow, Larry Hogan's Senate campaign had put a huge banner on our on our lawn, like as right by where our sign is and where hate has no home and we support Israel. So right next to that, there was a Larry Hogan for Senate sign. It didn't last long because when I came into work, I took it down because right here the IRS says we're not allowed to do that. And then I contacted the campaign and they said, we were told that we had permission to do that. So Luis, our custodian, brought the sign all the way back on our property to the dumpster. And I told this person, you're welcome to come by and pick it up anytime you want. So, you can't support or oppose any political candidate in any way. Also, contributions to political campaign funds or public statements of position, verbal or written, made on behalf of the organization in favor of or in opposition to any candidate for public office clearly violate the prohibition against political campaign activity. Violating this prohibition may result in denial or revocation of tax-exempt status and the imposition of certain excise taxes. Certain activities or expenditures may not be prohibited depending on the facts and circumstances. For example, certain voter education activities, including presenting public forums and publishing voter education guides, conducted in a nonpartisan manner, do not constitute prohibited political campaign activity. In addition, other activities intended to encourage people to participate in the electoral process, such as voter registration and get out the vote drives, would not be prohibited political campaign activity if conducted in a nonpartisan manner. So We could have a candidates forum here in an effort to educate voters about the candidates. And so we could have Larry Hogan and Angela also Brooks here to have a debate. We could host a debate or some other candidate forum. We could do that, but we would not be allowed to invite one of them and only one of them. That would smack of implying support of one candidate over another. But we could have, like it says, independent, get out to vote, encouraging people to register to vote, helping people to register to vote, all in a nonpartisan way, absolutely allowed to do that. On the other hand, voter education or registration activities with evidence of bias that would favor one candidate over another, or oppose a candidate in some manner, or have the effect of favoring a candidate or group of candidates, will constitute prohibited participation or intervention. So that seems pretty clear that an organization, a 503c3 organization, is not allowed to support a candidate. Okay, so that makes sense, and I think that's a great thing about the United States in promoting the separation just in terms of promoting, to be tax exempt means to be nonpartisan. Okay, it means other things too, and there's other things about what it means, how an organization can apply for 501c3 in terms of nonprofit and things like that, and what does it mean to be a charitable organization. But this specific area ensures that charitable organizations who want tax exempt status must be nonpartisan. Okay, so that enhances the political system in the country. It enhances the charitable organization itself to ensure that that members of our synagogue can rest assured that our synagogue will not make them feel uncomfortable about their political position. Where it becomes murky is about the rabbi, and what the rabbi can say in his or her role as the paid employee of the synagogue. And yes, all, I shouldn't say all, but the recommended contract that a congregation signs with the rabbi has a clause in it about freedom of the pulpit. That, in other words, the congregation can't tell me what about Judaism I'm allowed to teach or not to teach, and what I'm allowed to say from the bima or not say from the bima. Now, of course, there could be egregious crossing of a boundary, and in 30 years here at Sharei Tefillah, I haven't crossed the boundary. At least I haven't crossed the boundary enough that the congregation has come to me and said, you've crossed a boundary, and you do that again, you're fired. Okay? So that has never happened in 30 years. Now, people have commented to me about things that I've said in my sermons that may have touched a raw nerve, or may have by chance and unintentionally insulted a group of people, and then I have since apologized. So that has happened a couple of times over in the past 30 years. But I will say that there have been, I know of at least one member of the synagogue that asked to meet with me because when Trump was president, I frequently commented on policy, on statements, and behavior of the president. So this is where it gets murky, in that I think the congregation understood that I'm not a fan of Donald Trump. Okay, so that's clear, and it's one thing to not be a fan. It's another thing to kind of point out in a way what I think issues are, like what a candidate should stand for, and what problems that I might have ethically with a candidate. So that's where it gets murky. So I've never said outright that we need to vote for a candidate or not vote for a candidate. I haven't said those words specifically, but I have almost gotten there. Like I gave a high holiday sermon before the 2016 election, in which I pointed out some positive things about Hillary Clinton as a candidate. And I pointed out about a town hall meeting that she had in New Hampshire, where a rabbi from the conservative synagogue in Nashua, New Hampshire, that's the largest city in New Hampshire, so it's the largest synagogue in New Hampshire, and a question that he posed to Hillary Clinton and her response. So I just used that as the basis of the sermon to point out the issues that I saw that Hillary Clinton cared about, and that how she was trying to be an ethical person, and it was clear in that talk that I did not feel the same about the other candidate in 2016. Okay, but I didn't say we need to vote for Hillary Clinton. So that's why this is murky. And that's why I think even if someone were to have taken my sermons available on the web, so if someone were to send a link to that to the IRS and say that Sharei Tefillah should not be 501c3 based on this rabbi's sermon, I don't think that the IRS would view it as credible or a credible complaint. Okay, so but there has been so since that election and over the 4 years of his presidency, I did speak about aspects of Trump as president, and there was one member of the synagogue, this couple that came to me, who were Trump supporters and who were uncomfortable with the sermons I was giving. I tried to explain that I wasn't necessarily I wasn't telling people to be opposed to Trump, but I was opposed to some aspects, and I thought that it was my Jewish right to point out these things, and they felt uncomfortable about that, and they left the synagogue over it. Okay, so that did prompt me to consider tempering my comments, and certainly in this campaign, I haven't said anything about Trump or Harris, or before that, Trump or Biden. Certainly, it's not going to be a focus of my high holiday sermons this year. And so, but I do think if Harris becomes president and there are issues with her support of Israel, that I would speak out about that. And if Trump becomes president and there are issues about threats to democracy, let's say, I will speak out about that. And that I am in my right to do that. Okay? I would even be in my right to do that now, to point out things about both candidates. So again, this is where it gets murky. As long as I see my role as a paid employee of Sharei Tefillah congregation, that I also need to follow the 50c3 guidelines. And as a paid employee, the rules that apply to the organization also applies to the people who are paid by the organization. That's how I see it. I'm not sure that that's what the law requires. So, like, I'm not sure that on my private Facebook page that I would not be allowed to support a candidate. I'm not sure that I own my house. I'm not sure that I would not be allowed to put a sign up to vote for or against a candidate, right? So there are other houses in my neighborhood that have had candidate signs on their lawns. To be safe about and taking the 501c3 seriously, do not put up signs. I don't have bumper stickers on my car, and I don't promote or come out against any political candidate. I don't do that. Again, I don't know if I am within my right as an individual to do that, even though I'm a paid employee by a 501c3 organization. Okay, so that all of that being said, and understanding my position about how I see my place vis-a-vis Sharei Tefillah and its tax-exempt status, I want to share this video, this 3-minute video from Rabbi Lauren Holtzblatt. Here it is, and share. Okay, so try to disregard the stuff on the side of the screen, but maybe I can make it full screen. Yes, I can do that. Okay, good. So now we have no distractions. So this is Rabbi Lauren Holtzblatt. She is the co-rabbi, the co-senior rabbi of Adas Israel congregation in D.C. Okay, so she's a prominent rabbi. I would say, on the forwards 50 influential people in America, she's probably on the list. So Adas Israel is a prominent congregation, as we know. It's the largest conservative synagogue in the DMV, with about, 1,600, 1,800 family units, and prominent people. Because it's in DC, there are prominent people, both in the corporate world, the private world, and in the public world, who are members of Adas Israel. That includes the second gentleman. I believe Doug Emhoff is a member of Adas Israel. Supreme Court justices have been members of Adas Israel, most famously Ruth Bader Ginsburg, may she rest in peace. And if we watched Ruth Bader Ginsburg's funeral, the service that took place in the Supreme Court itself, Rabbi Holtzblatt gave one of the eulogies. Okay, so she's Rabbi Holtzblatt herself is a prominent person. She's well-spoken, she's articulate, and Jews should be proud that she's a rabbi for most of what she has to say. Okay, so as you see up here on the top left, this is from a Zoom call with the Jewish Democratic Council of America, one of these organizations of Jews who are Democrats. Okay, so she's speaking to the Jewish Democratic Council of America, 2 minutes and 59 seconds. So let's watch what she has to say.
I could tell you we need to elect Vice President Kamala Harris because as Jews, our sacred texts teach us to build a world where we feed the hungry, where we care for the sick, where we love the stranger, where we guard and nurture this planet. Those are her values. That is what her policies seek to achieve, and that would be enough. But I want to encourage us all to get out the vote for Kamala, not only because of her track record and her values, but also because of what I've seen of her outside of the spotlight. My grandfather, the son of immigrants from Poland, served the United States military in World War II. After the war, he couldn't get a job in America with the last name Shapiro. In order to feed his family, he changed his name to Packard. America was a place that gave his family life and opportunity, but only if he hid his identity as a Jew. 80 years later, as his granddaughter, I led the vice president's Seder at her residence this past Pesach. I walked past the mezuzah on her front door. In the privacy of the dining room of the vice president and the second gentleman, we lit Yom Tov candles. We sang Dayenu. We ate matzah as we discussed the modern afflictions of racism, poverty, and the overturning of Roe. And we talked at length about the hostages. We talked about the critical ceasefire negotiations and the endless hours the vice president and the president were committing to get all of the hostages home. We talked about Hirsch Goldberg, Poland, and the other hostages from 17 other countries being held in Gaza. We talked at length about the need for Israel's security, which the VP has stood steadfast for, as you've heard in the previous speakers on this call, but also the need for peace and an end to the war. There were no cameras. There was no press. This is who she is, and I've seen it again and again. She understands the Jewish American experience in its multifaceted nuances. She understands generational trauma, and she rejects false binaries. She seeks to build a world with both a secure Israel and a future for the Palestinian people. She knows both are possible. Judaism is a strong part of her life, and quite frankly, she gets us. As a woman, as a rabbi, as a Jew, and as an American, I could not think of a more compassionate, fearless champion to lead this country. Let's get out the vote and elect Kamala Harris for president.
So that's pretty clear. Now, I will say she was videotaping that from her home, or at least I could say it was not her office at Addis Israel. So I've been in the rabbinic suite at Addis Israel, and neither office has a fireplace. Okay, so I know for sure that was not her office at the synagogue. So she's speaking from her home, and so I will say this: how she is a prominent rabbi because of being at Addis Israel congregation, right? In other words, if she were the rabbi of some small synagogue in Iowa, I really don't think that she would, if she came out to be pro Kamala Harris, that would be nice. The Democratic Party would appreciate it, but she's not in a prominent position to influence others. The fact that, so that's why I would say there would be the difference between me making that video and Rabbi Holtzblatt making that video. Okay, so it's one thing if Layman says it as the rabbi of Sharei Tefillah. Okay, so that's nice. Layman at Sharei Tefillah, that rabbi says vote for Harris, but it's not going to influence anybody. Now, people do watch the recordings of my class, but certainly not in numbers. I'm not what they call an influencer. I don't have 10,000 or more people watching my videos. And if I did, then I probably wouldn't need to be the rabbi of Sharei Tefillah anymore. I'd be making money myself that way. So I'm not an influencer in any way. And this is not to demean my position at Sharei Tefillah, but it is meant to highlight why Lauren Holtzblatt is influential. Yes, she's articulate and eloquent. Yes, but more importantly, she's the rabbi of Addis Israel. And it's in that position that she can influence others. It's not her intellect that's going to influence people. It's not her speaking style and her charisma and the power of her words that's going to influence enough people for this to make a difference. And that's why I would say that in my opinion, she crossed the line. Yeah, I'll say. So Bob, what do you say?
Okay, on the video, and
Yes.
I respectfully disagree
Okay.
because on the video, it doesn't say the rabbi of Adas Israel.
That's right.
It just says her name.
Right.
And there's nothing that I read on the 501(c) things that say if you're an employee of a religious institution, you cannot advocate as an individual. She's
Right.
advocating as an individual. Now, maybe I'm slicing the salami real thin.
That's what I'm saying, Bob. Let's see. So I slice it in a different way than you do, because I would not have done that. So I see what she did on purpose, right? She probably told the Jew that forum that yes, I'll speak, but do not identify me as the rabbi of Addis Israel.
Right.
Okay. And
And
she consciously also did not record from her Addis Israel office. Okay,
now,
I get it. I get it. So like I said before, it's splitting hairs, but I don't know if I would take that chance. That because she's prominent, there could be people. There was an article written about this, and I don't know how reputable it is, but I did copy and paste it. I don't need to share it. It's from the Washington Free Beacon that talked about the video that came out and then went into some dirty laundry about interviewing people at Addis Israel themselves, members who were upset that Rabbi Holtzblatt did that. Now, it could be, like I said, there are prominent people in Addis Israel. There could be somebody who might want to consider taking that up with the IRS and threatening Addis Israel to say, you know what, I'm going to make a fight about this in court to threaten our 503c3 status. There could
Rabbi,
be people who did that. Yes, Bob.
with all due respect, there are so many mega churches, evangelical churches, that not only do they cross the line, they bulldoze across it.
Yes.
And
Right.
if
Okay. So I get you, Bob. I get it. And I think that the IRS probably puts up its hands and they're not going to get involved because the publicity about that would be too negative. How dare the government tell this church that what they can talk about or they can't talk about? And that's separation of church and state. So yeah, I get what you're saying, Bob. So yes, I understand. I'm trying to have, I just think, I wanted to talk about this because it reflects on where what the line is that I see as a red line for me in terms of what I personally think I should be allowed to talk about and where beyond which I cannot cross that line. Okay. And I'm just saying that I would not have done, well, I don't know. If I were the co-rabbi of Addis Israel and I had that kind of prominence and like I was on, like she spoke at the Democratic National Convention just a week after, or a couple days after that video came out, like she gave an invocation or a benediction one night. You know, if I had that kind of prominence, I'm not sure what I would do. I'm not sure what I would do if I were in her place. And I guess I would hope that she consulted with people at Addis Israel before doing that. And that's what I hope I would do, that I would consult with the leadership here and with the shul's lawyer to see if I would be allowed to do that, and that I would have the backing of the shul and the shul's lawyer before I went ahead and did that. So for the benefit of the doubt, I would assume that Rabbi Holtzblatt did the same thing, and these are the conditions that that they put on her. You can do that, but don't do it from the synagogue, do it from your home, and don't tell anybody, don't officially say that you're the rabbi of Addis Israel. So, yes, I'm just saying that, so the whole purpose of bringing this all up today is the idea of what is the freedom of the pulpit, and that it's what kinds of things are should be on the rabbi's mind when talking from the bima. You know, issues like this arise also when talking about Israel. Okay, and so talking about Israel doesn't affect our 501c3 status, because it's not in America. So I'm talking about something outside of America. So I know that Israel is a hot topic, and I have to, and I so I think that the congregation knows where I stand regarding Israel and Israeli politics, and the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, and two-state solution and things like that. So I've talked about all of those things over the years, not just in sermons, but in classes, etc. And that's perfectly acceptable for me to talk about. And at the same time, I know that there could be people, because there are Jews on the whole spectrum of this, like we were talking before we came on, and I started recording about the article that was in the Washington Post today about a rabbi who, working for a Jewish organization in Philadelphia, who was fired from her position because of her anti-Zionist stance, and like she's a supporter of, or if not a member of, Jewish Voices for Palestine. And we'll talk about that at another time. We might talk about it next week, the role of anti-Zionists in the Zionist Jewish community and what that all means. So we'll talk about that next week. But what's the red line for the congregation, for any congregation, for the rabbi when it comes to Israel? How far can you go in whether your stance is conservative or liberal or anywhere in between? And I think you can go as far as a congregation lets you go before people threaten leaving the synagogue if you don't stop talking that way. Okay, and there could be a breaking point in which the rabbi is not willing to take a different stance and insists on talking this way about Israel, and the congregation then saying, well, if you keep doing that, we can't support you and you can no longer be our rabbi. That could happen. It could also happen about a number of other social justice, domestic policy issues, that doesn't affect the 501c3 status. If I talk about if I talk about climate change, or if I talk about any other, if I talk about pro-life or pro-choice, or gun control, or any other social justice issue like that, that doesn't affect my the status of the synagogue, but it could affect if there are a number of vocal people in the congregation who take one particular political stance that encompasses a particular view of all those issues, and enough people in the congregation have that view, then I need to be aware of that. And Bob had to go. Not that he's disagreeing with anything I'm saying; he just had to go. So the status of the rabbi and what the rabbi says is, in that regard, is being mindful of the nature of the community that the rabbi is representing, right? So so I have to be mindful of that, as I am also committed to particular ethical and moral values. right? So let me just say, as an example, um, I have particular Jewish religious positions that affect my performance as a rabbi in terms of what I can do as a rabbi, how I understand this. So, in other words, my rabbinical association, the Rabbinical Assembly, forbids me from officiating at a marriage where a Jew is marrying somebody not Jewish. I'm not allowed to officiate at such a ceremony. The state of Maryland permits me to officiate at weddings in Maryland. So I can sign a marriage license and I can officiate at weddings in the state of Maryland, and I can officiate at weddings anywhere in the United States. Some states require me to register ahead of time and prove that I'm a rabbi. But once I prove that like in the Commonwealth of Massachusetts, I have to do that every time I officiate in Massachusetts. In D.C., I had to get another rabbi, a conservative movement rabbi, to vouch for me, to sign a document and notarize that document for DC to allow me then to officiate at weddings in DC. Every state jurisdiction is different, but I'm allowed to officiate at weddings. The state of Maryland doesn't care what kind of religious ceremony I do. They just know because I'm a duly ordained rabbi that I'm allowed to do that. But my rabbinical association and our approach to Jewish law forbids me from officiating at an interfaith wedding. So therefore, the congregation knows that, and the congregation hasn't told me that I need to officiate at interfaith weddings. And if it did, then we would have an issue to discuss. Okay. Now, related to that also is I do not officiate at funerals where the deceased is cremated. I just don't do that. I see that as violating Jewish law, and I will not do that. There are other conservative rabbis that will officiate at funerals where the deceased has been cremated. They will officiate at a memorial service. They'll officiate at a service with the ashes there in the room, either in an urn or in a box, and they'll officiate at the interment if the family decides to bury the ashes, that the rabbi will officiate at that ceremony. I will not do that because it's against my understanding of Jewish law, and I'm not willing to compromise my understanding of Jewish law in that regard. So this has only been an issue, and it's not an issue. This has only come up for conversation once in my 30 years here, where a family is saying, will you officiate at this service? So my loved one is being cremated. That has only happened last week. So the notice hasn't gone out from the synagogue yet but anyway, I told the family, no, the family understands that I cannot, and they're not upset with me. They understand themselves that about my position, and that's fine. So it's but this could become an issue that if this becomes a trend, that people in the congregation, their family members are doing this, and that I refuse to officiate at the funeral, where if there wasn't the cremation, I would normally officiate. If enough families are upset about that, that could become something that the congregation and I will have to talk about. So that's what I'm saying. So the issue is 501c3 versus other issues that the rabbi has to be careful about. So go ahead, Lori.
Yeah, well, a few things, but I agree with Bob that technically it's not a violation because the rabbi is speaking as an individual, not representing an organization.
Right.
The language clearly was talking about an organization. I also understand what I think you're saying, that in your view, it's not in the spirit.
Yeah.
Yeah. The other point I would add that makes this different, in my opinion, is that this is this is not a normal election. You know, what
Okay.
in my opinion,
Yeah, no, I understand.
what's
And
at
I think
stake
most
here is,
people would agree with
yeah,
that, but I think it
uh,
would be, yes.
yeah. So, and what's at stake in terms of underlying values is so enormous. You know,
Yes.
what happens in the next 4 years in this country, in the world, it's just enormous. So I could understand and I could support her using the influence she has, even if
Yes.
it's indirect, to try
Yeah.
to persuade people, you know.
So I understand that, and I would argue that without having a history of Trump as president in 2016 to know 4 years in office what it was like as him as president. 2016 was almost the same situation as it is now. And so that's why I spoke about it then.
Mhm.
And that's why I'm not, well, that's not really why I'm not speaking about it now. I think for me, talking about Israel and how October 7th totally has affected our lives Jewishly since then. It's aspects of that that I'm going to be speaking about over the high holidays. I'm not, you know, if October 7th hadn't happened, then there might be something about the political campaign that I would have focused on, but so again, it's like I said before, it's walking a fine line. How do you talk about issues that I think we should think about as American Jews when we vote for a candidate?
Mhm.
Okay, so talking about issues that should be of utmost concern to us is different than saying this is a candidate you should vote for.
Right.
So you know, and just the issues that I would care about, you know, the Pew Research Organization has done studies of the the American Jewish community and what's important to them when they vote. And is Israel the number one issue? It has been, but it depends on the age of the people answering the question. The older we are, the more important Israel is to for us as American Jews. And then what about domestic policy? What about social justice issues? Again, it depends on our politics. You know, American Jews who are Democrats tend to care more about social justice issues than American Jews who generally vote Republican. Okay, these are broad overgeneralizations, not to say that Republicans don't care about social justice issues, not to say that Democrats don't care about Israel. I'm just overgeneralizing here. So I personally, after speaking in 2016 about it, have thought more about that, and I tend to be more careful in how I approach talking about these issues because I don't want to come across
Mhm.
as being a Democrat or a Republican, because even coming across that way without saying it outright is still murky for me. And I just don't think it's an area that I'm willing to wade in. Gabe.
I just pulled up the statute underlying the IRS guidance that you had,
Yes.
and with regard to speaking about political party affiliation,
Yes.
statute says it refers to whether you support or don't support a particular candidate.
Right.
It doesn't say whether you support or don't support the Democratic Party.
Ah.
There may be other sources in the courts. I'm sure this has come up before
Yeah.
at some point. But it's interesting that the distinction is drawn.
Uh-huh. So a difference between the party and the candidate. That's what you're saying?
Yeah, I mean, I saw one of these mega church ministers say that you cannot call yourself a Christian if you vote for the Democratic Party.
Right.
Now, as disturbing as that is, under the statute, that would seem to be permissible unless there's other court cases or
I
sources.
see. So if the pastor had said a Christian can't vote for Kamala Harris, that would be violating the statute. But if the pastor says a Christian can't vote for the Democratic Party, then that's okay.
And that, yeah, it's assuming there aren't court cases and other authorities to the
Right,
contrary.
got it. Okay, so again, if synagogues are willing to play with it and like dance on the red line, okay, go ahead and do it. I'm not willing to do that, and I don't think it's necessary to do that. Okay, so yeah. So it just makes for a fascinating discussion, and just talk in general about, what rabbis talk about, what rabbis think about when they're approaching particular topics, and how they should broach that within their community. So I remember, I think one of the first sermons I gave in 1994. Right. So I became the rabbi August 1st, 1994, and the high holidays were 1 month later, I think the first week in September. And one of my sermons that first year was about homosexuality. So I took a chance as the new rabbi. I was 32 years old at the time, to talk about homosexuality and what the Jewish position should be at that time in 1994, where the Rabbinical Assembly was opposed to homosexual Jews becoming rabbis. That didn't change until 18 years later. 12 years later. 12 years later is when it changed. 2006. And so it was an issue within the Jewish community at the time, what our attitude towards Jews who are homosexual should be. So I took a chance then about that. So I'm willing sometimes to take a chance in talking about certain things, knowing that it could be not dangerous, but it could raise some hackles, and it was fine because of how I approach it. Right? If I become strident about anything that I talk about, I think then, or if any rabbi is strident in their position, I think then that they risk their stance within the synagogue. The less strident one is, and one more open-minded one is about issues, then I think the more accepted the rabbi is within the community. Okay, so we'll stop here for today. Thanks everyone for being here for Jews in the News. And like I said, next week we'll talk about can a Jew be an anti-Zionist?
Right.
Okay.
Yasher Koach,
Take care.
Jonah.
Yeah,
Sure.
yeah, thank you. Great.
Have a good day.